gratitude to Dr. Didwell for giving me an opportunity to be a part of this great vision of ARDN. Thank you, Dr. Didwell. Many people, when walk around the city, they see posters of sustainability, fight climate change, go green, and so on. But how many of them really understand the effects of climate change that they're going to face in the near future? How many of them have a conversation about climate change with their families every day and involving them, or even becoming a role model for the kids to follow their footsteps towards saving the planet? I, Kiara Kaur, 7 years old, felt the urgent need to address this issue at this prestigious platform of ARDN, supporting fight against climate change and violence against women and young girls. Climate change is taking victims from our beautiful earth every day, tipping towards catastrophe. Starting from dead pine trees of Rocky Mountain National Park in states to Africa's Lake Chad, which has lost about 80% of its surface area since the 1960s. The effects look scary and worrisome. Humans are burning fossil fuels such as coal and oil to run cars, fly planes, and light homes. These all release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, making the climate hotter. And this is not just limited to climate change, but it is acting as a serious aggravator of gender-based violence. And these two are both inextricable. The climate crisis is not gender neutral. Women and young girls experience greater impacts of climate change, which amplifies existing gender inequalities and poses unique threats to their livelihoods, health, and safety. In fact, the United Nations statistics shows 70 to 80% people displaced by climate change are the indigenous people, mainly women and young girls, and affecting them and their ability to do their everyday tasks, which partly explains why some girls are forced to choose between education and managing livelihood. Violence against women and young girls is not just confined to developing countries. Researchers have shown that even in developed countries, the natural disasters such as wildfires, floods, and droughts increase the risk of violence against women and young girls. Climate change. The world needs greater involvement of women and young girls in policy making tackling climate action. We need to focus on how to deliver the 17 sustainability goals by amplifying the potential of indigenous people, mainly women, value-based education, and supporting them in business or employment, and not to marginalize them in fight against climate change. Let's make it bold and loud for every citizen of this planet, men, women, and also the children. Let's come together and use our voices to transform the world for the sustainable and safe future to make this world a better place for everyone. Let's start the change to fight the change. Thank you.
But achieving them so that others may fulfill theirs. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a central thread running through the efforts of all those striving to make the world a better place. Goals number 5 in particular, that of gender equality and the empowerment of women, is one particularly close to all our hearts here at FIFA. We have recently seen at the FIFA Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand how football can empower and inspire women and girls across the world and give society food for thought in terms of the place women can and should occupy in it. The magnificent performances of Morocco, Nigeria, and South Africa, and I'm sure to millions of women across the African continent. A sign of just how far we have come, and in such a short space of time, is that I visited Morocco back in June 2021, and at that time, there was very little place for women in football in the country. 2 years later, and the girls I spoke to there about the difficulty they were facing in playing the sport that they love reached the knockout stages of the FIFA Women's World Cup in Australia and New Zealand. An important landmark achievement and one that served also as an example not only for football but for society as a whole. I had actually witnessed firsthand football's power to make change long before I became FIFA General Secretary. Working for the United Nations World Food Programme, I was based in a number of countries around Africa and visited many others. Right. But football could always bring people together, stop fighting, and even put a smile on the face of those enduring terrible suffering. Football truly
trained, they learn digital systems, they learn AI-based data analytics, and they form the key workforce of the project. 3 months in, the full community and town gained zero waste status. And who did this? It was these incredible women. So we all know that when women are in climate change and leading sustainability, change is bound to happen. But the question is, what is the role that women have to play in climate resilience and climate change? But let me ask you this. If you're going to ask what is going to be their role and responsibility, please, why don't you make them part of the decision-making process? Why aren't or why shouldn't women be part of the decision-making process? And why shouldn't they be the beneficiary of the revenue economics of the so-called business that is going to happen? How do we do this? We have got to dismantle the patriarchal banking system and finance system of the African continent. Women need to have access and equal access to finance and markets. Now, we heard about a lot of statistics. Let's talk about statistics. 50% of the continent of 1.5 billion, they are women. But do you know how many of them own agricultural land? 2%. 2% own agricultural land. You're talking of climate resilience, but let me ask you this statistics. Did you know that when a woman is empowered and when she has income, 90% of that goes back to the family, whereas if it's a man earning, it is 30 or 40% that is going back in. You educate a woman, you know what happens? It is 100% likely that their daughters will get educated, won't get married off as a girl bride, and will go on to become successful.
Of African businesses. Their demonstrated economic leadership today presents vital opportunities for future climate leadership. Africa has the world's highest proportion of women entrepreneurs. Africa has the highest proportion of women entrepreneurs. In sub-Saharan Africa, over 25% of women are involved in starting or managing a new business. This movement towards female-driven businesses has been building for decades in Africa. In 2018, the World Bank reported that Africa is the only region in the world where more women pursue entrepreneurship than men. Women across Africa are already playing crucial roles in responding to both the changes and the acute disasters driven by the climate crisis. Women often take on the primary responsibility of securing food, water, and energy for their households. Climate change has impacted the availability of these resources, forcing women to adapt and innovate. Do you know what adaptation and innovation leads to? It leads to solutions. And I am a firm believer that the people who are closest to any problem are the people who are closest to the solution. And the women and girls in Africa are the closest to the climate crisis. And so it is imperative that they have a seat at the decision-making table as economies across the region continue to grow.
Thank you very much. Making reference.
In reverse. Most of the time, what happens is with these clean technologies, they bring them in and they ask women to change practices that they've been doing for decades and say, this is going to make things better. Let's try an alternative idea. What if we put women at the center from the beginning? What if we had a start with women instead of the stove? So how do we do this? We do this through radical listening and investing in solutions that are created by, alongside, with, and for women. And in doing that, what will happen is if we center women and we provide them with the resources and the education that technology supports, we will see the change that we desire.
Thank you very much.
In charge of clean cooking. I would say from my heart that I expect 100% that women lead this, because then for sure we know that it's going to work and it's going to succeed. To quote an example, I want to agree with my colleague. Technology is not the solution, especially when you try to replicate a one-shoe-fits-all attitude by bringing redundant technology into Africa. No, the answer is in socio-economic engineering. Like she said, you have to start with the women. You have to start in the kitchen, their practices, what they want and what they need, and not show down the truth, something that somebody sitting somewhere on a continent, somewhere else, in the comfort of an air conditioning thinks is going to work. So, two things. Number one, at GCIB, we are currently mobilizing a project for clean fuel, clean cooking solutions. It started with a context study, it started with community engagement, and it's going to empower women in 600,000 households to have access to